Is Mike Johnson, Mr. Speaker. How are you, sir?
Mark, I'm doing great. Great to hear your voice.
Well, at least somebody likes my voice. Most people don't like my voice, Mr. Speaker. They say I have a voice. Well, I have a great big one. Yeah, they say I have a voice for TV and a face for radio, so I don't know what's going on. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, you wanted to speak directly to the American people about these funding issues, Israel, and so forth. And I want to give you that opportunity because there's a lot of static in between and a lot of commentary, which is fine, but I do things a little differently. So go ahead, talk to the public. What is going on, and why is it controversial?
Well, good question, Mark. I think it's controversial because there's a lot of misinformation about what we're doing here and why, okay? Now, remember that the Senate sent to the House the supplemental foreign aid package a few months ago, right? What we're doing right now is the House is not passing the Senate supplemental bill. We're trying to fix that with some better policy and some better process. We took that bill that had lumped Israel aid, Ukraine, and the Indo-Pacific together, and we broke it into separate pieces so that in the House, everyone can vote up or down on their merits, each one of those items. And then we added a fourth bill to it, which is kind of a supplemental. We call it the Secure America Act. And it has some of our policies and some of our preferences in there where we make it tougher on Iran and Russia and China with sanctions. And we add the Repo Act, which is the seizure and transfer of about $5 billion in Russian sovereign assets in the U.S., to help the Ukraine effort. Some of the other innovations and things that we all believe in. The loan concept, that's something that President Trump has championed. We added that into this so that the Ukrainian funding that goes to support anything related to the government is actually a loan instead of a gift. I mean, there's a lot of important policy innovations and things that we've changed in here, and we added an amendment process so that the members of the House can vote their will and add things and subtract things. So that's what's happening. It'll be on the floor on Saturday here in the House, and everybody will get to vote their preferences on that. And I hope at the end we can take care of our responsibilities. We're, helping Israel in its time of greatest need is a top priority for our country for all the reasons that you and I know. And Ukrainians desperately need lethal aid right now. I mean, we can't allow Vladimir Putin to roll through another country and take Kyiv. I mean, it would set us up to spend much more money and potentially have American boots on the ground over there because he'll be right on the border of NATO countries. These are very serious matters with global implications, and we got to address them very soberly. And I believe that's what we're going to do here in the House.
I agree with you on Ukraine, by the way. And but if I'm a member of the House and I don't agree with you in Ukraine, I guess I vote against that, right?
Yeah, well, you have an opportunity. That's the whole point. I mean, look, the whole process, the way it's supposed to work in the House, is single subject, distinct issues that we argue and debate and address on their own merits. And that's what we've done here. The Senate likes to lump everything together in these giant omnibus bills, and we don't believe in that. So we're getting back to that regular order, that regular process, and there'll be lots of thoughtful discussion about it. And I've encouraged every one of my colleagues, Mark, who are going to vote on this, to go into get the confidential classified briefings on these things, get the real information, and be fully armed and equipped when you make such a consequential decision. I mean, Ronald Reagan used to remind us, and you and I revere him and his policies, peace through strength. The reason we're in this mess right now is because the Biden administration is projecting exactly the opposite. It's weakness on the world stage, and you talk about it all the time, informing your viewers and listeners, and you're right. I mean, if we had a strong commander-in-chief, we wouldn't be in this situation. If Donald Trump was a president right now, we wouldn't be having this conversation at all. But this is the status of things, and this is where we are. And America has a role to play. A strong America is good for stability around the world. Doesn't mean we're supposed to be the world's policemen or have boots on the ground all over the place. It's not what that means. It means that we've got to show that we are the leader of the free world, that we do take our responsibilities seriously, and we're willing to defend freedom. Just the perception of that keeps terrorists and tyrants at bay. And that's a really important thing for us to maintain.
It's apparently very controversial to arm our allies so they can defeat the enemy. I mean, Reagan did it all over the world and defeated the Soviet Union. And he armed our allies in our hemisphere. He armed our allies in Africa. He armed our allies in the Middle East. He armed our allies in Eastern Europe. And now apparently it's controversial. Now, what do you make of the point where some of our friends are saying, now, wait a minute. We were going to use foreign aid as leverage to secure the border. Tell us about that.
Yeah, great point. the number one priority for the American people is the border. Of course, it's our number one priority as well. We've been fighting on that every single day since Joe Biden walked into the Oval Office and started issuing those executive orders to open that border wide. You and I both know they did that by design. They engineered it. That's the reason we just impeached Mayorkas in the House, because they did this to open the borders and bring people in, I think, to turn them into voters and change the outcome of the decennial census. Okay, that's the game. Well, it's caused untold damage to the country, and we've got probably a real estimate about 16 million illegals in the country. The American people are irate about that because of all the parade of horribles that comes from it. Fentanyl poisoning deaths and violent crimes and murders by violent criminals that come in from all over the world. But here's the thing. We passed laws to fix it. We passed H.R. 2, our signature legislation, the Secure the Border Act. We sent that to Chuck Schumer over a year ago. He's completely ignored it. They don't want to close the border. And here's the thing. I remind everybody, the Republican Party is in charge of only one house of Congress. And by the way, Mark, we have the smallest margin in U.S. history. I have a one-vote margin. That means if we want to close the border, we can pass it. If we get all the Republicans, keep them all together, we can send it to the Senate, and we did. But then it dies there because the Democrats, the open border Democrats, run the Senate and the White House. I can't force it into law. But here's the point. Even if we were able to pass it into law, they'd ignore it. We have federal immigration laws in the books, but Mayorkas and Biden have flouted it. They don't care. They've ignored it. They would do it again. So we've demanded that the president use his executive authority, which he clearly has in the law. I've sent it to him. I handed it to him in person with a menu of options. He won't take it because they want the border to be open. So to put the border on this foreign supplemental package would be a great thing. We would do it again. But here's the problem. Because I have a one-vote margin, I have to have every single Republican in the House to agree to attach it. Here's the second part of that. We've got a handful of people who are never Ukrainers, and they don't want to fund Ukraine at all, right? So they won't agree to do that. And because I can't do that with the Republicans, I would need Democrats to attach it. No Democrat's going to vote for border security, so it's a mathematical impossibility.
You know, Mr. Speaker, I listened to you. I analyzed this stuff on my own. And we are boxing ourselves in, as you're explaining, as I've tried to explain to the audience, and as I say to these people who text me, conservatives, if the Speaker would only listen to me, if we shut down the government, if we did this, we did that, not one of the things that they say is possible. It's not doable. You don't have the votes to do what they want. You don't have the votes to do what I call the rhinos want. You're walking a tightrope. Now, let me ask you this bluntly. If, in fact, you did what some of these folks are saying, nothing would happen again, and our allies, including Israel, wouldn't get the arms that they need while they're under attack. Is that correct or not?
100%. Here's the thing. The Democrats have an Israel problem, right? We have funded Israel, as you know. I mean, it was within 24 hours of my becoming speaker back in October. We funded Israel. We sent it over with a pay for. We took the $14 billion out of the IRS slush fund, expansion fund, and made Israel a priority instead. Chuck Schumer ignored it. About a month ago, Mark, I tried again. I sent a plain, clean, we call it a clean Israel funding bill. I put that on the floor to vote on. No pay for. Send it over. Let's just take care of Israel and get it off the table. 166 House Democrats voted against it. You know why? Because President Biden issued a veto threat for a clean Israel funding bill. You know why I did that? Because they're terrified. They have the pro-Hamas wing of the Democrat Party is going crazy right now. And he knows that if he does that, he funds Israel on its own, he has a civil war in his party. So they won't do it. They won't touch it. The Senate Democrats won't give Israel the funding. Mark, the only way that you and I and the American people can ensure that Israel gets the help it needs in this desperate hour is to attach it in this foreign supplemental package so that Joe Biden is forced to send the support to Israel. If we don't
I don't think people understand that that's the bottom line. Biden can veto whatever he wants.
Right.
He can veto whatever he wants. So people are beating their chests and patting themselves on the back of the head that they're the most brilliant people to ever walk on the face of the earth, that all you have to do is shut down the government. All you have to do is put that provision in there. All you have to do it. Schumer's not going to go for it. Biden's not going to go for it. We're stuck where we are. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Speaker. You've been a conservative your entire life. You've been a conservative in the House of Representatives. What's it like now being called a rhino globalist?
You know, it's It is not a lot of fun. Okay. I'm 52 years old. My entire life, I was in the trenches for the conservative movement. I was a constitutional law attorney like you, and I used to litigate cases to defend our fundamental freedoms in the courts. I did that for 20 years before I got into politics. I came into Congress as a constitutional conservative, and I've defended those principles and led here, and it's the reason I wound up as Speaker of the House. I mean, I helped President Trump in his impeachment defenses twice. I mean, I've done the heavy lifting, heavy load here. Now we find ourselves in this unprecedented moment in history. It's a fateful moment in history. And I come in with our core conservative principles, and I'm here to advance those as far as I can up the field every single day, inch by inch. My colleagues here, some of them, want me to throw a Hail Mary pass on every play, Mark. That's not possible. That's not a game plan. It's 3 yards in a cloud of dust, as we used to say when we played football. You got to go inch by inch up the field and get the first down to stay in the game. If we do that, we're going to win in November. Donald Trump is going to be elected president again. We are going to win a Republican majority in the Senate, and we are going to keep and grow the majority in the House. And when we have control, totally different ballgame. We can start throwing Hail Mary passes again. We can do those big plays and transformational change, and by golly, we're going to do it, Mark. We got an aggressive 100 days agenda that we'll run and fix all this mess. I told Donald Trump himself a couple days ago, Mr. President, I'm going to state the obvious. In your next term, you could be the most consequential president of the modern era because everything is a disaster, and you can fix it. We run a policy agenda based on our core conservative principles. We'll do the greatest service to this country that the history will record, but we got to get there. So is it fun to be taking arrows for the reality that we have with the numbers right now? No. But I'm going to do my job, and I'm going to stay dug in, and I'm not changing who I am or what I believe.
Now, let me ask
and I'm
you
going to try to guide this institution. Yeah.
If you had cut out Ukraine, if you had tied the funding to the border, or the alternative shut down the government, how much progress would you have made on any front?
Oh, zero. And we would guarantee we don't win the majority. See, people don't understand. They say shut the government down. That sounds like a great idea. But guess what? You got to remember, the president holds all the cards in a shutdown. They wanted us to shut down. Mark, why? Because Joe Biden would make it so painful on the American people. But I'm saying even if you did, Biden has to agree whatever it is you're putting your gun to his head to, and he's not a rational president. He's not a rational president. In other words, you guys shouldn't even have to be doing what you're doing to secure the border, to fund our allies and so forth. You're hustling to try and figure out how to force the executive branch and the Democrats in the Senate to get this done. That's the way I'm looking at it. Well, that's exactly right. And remember this, too, with regard to the shutdown. Once it's shut down and they stop paying our troops who are in harm's way, and they don't pay TSA agents, and everybody across the country starts getting their flights canceled, and, oh, don't worry, they won't be paying the Border Patrol agents either. So all those open sectors, the blame would be shifted to us for not paying them. You know, imagine that narrative. Well, guess what? To reopen the government, remembering the numbers, remember, I can only lose one Republican. I'll have a big group of Republicans who won't go along with it. It won't be pure enough for them. Whatever the thing is, they won't reopen it, which means you'll have to have Democrats. Imagine the deal that we'd have to cut. How much of a pound of flesh that we would have to give to get out of that mess. It's just
very quickly,
an impossible situation. Yeah.
You only have a minute or two. You have liberal Republicans, right? You have Republicans who are potentially as difficult as other people in your caucus, correct?
Well, yes, true. We got a great mix of people from a great mix of districts. It's a very interesting dynamic.
And you get a 1-vote majority.
1-vote majority. That's right.
And you have to take on the Senate and Biden, and they don't want to fund Israel unless Ukraine's funded. Is that the truth or not?
That is exactly right.
Okay, you've tried running up the hill on Israel alone. They shot it down. Correct.
Correct. Twice.
You tried running up the hill to secure the border, and they won't even take it up, correct?
Absolutely right.
Okay. You impeached Mayorkas, and they wouldn't even take it up, correct?
That's right.
Okay. Well, the problem here is we're not going to get our allies the armaments that they need, whether it's Taiwan facing down communist China, who's our enemy, or Ukraine facing down Russia, who's putting killer satellites in the sky and hypersonic missiles aimed at us, or Iran, which is building nukes and an administration that's helping them fund it. We will not be able to arm our friends. Arm them. if we play any more games, and I call them games because every one of these, they're not conservatives. I'm a conservative. Every one of these people have no plan. It would have worked. They say it would have worked. I'm not an idiot. I've been around 50 years. It won't work. Now, that doesn't mean, Mr. Speaker, you sell out. And I'm not saying you are. You're not. You're trying to fight this. I'm not saying you don't shut down the government when you need to shut down the government. I'm for it. Reagan did it 6 times. But you don't shut down the government just to shut down the government. You got to have a plan.
Exactly. That's
all right. Well, there you go. You spoke to the American people. I spoke to the American people. Let the chips fall where they may, sir.
Go get them, Mark. I appreciate you. All
right. Good luck to you. I just thought it was time the speaker wanted to come on, that he got to say what he wanted to say rather than everybody saying what he's trying to say. You can agree with him or disagree with him. But I have my own view of these things. Other people don't tell me what to think. I know what to think. The war is breaking out. The world is at war in little pieces right now. And it's going to get worse. While we dither.